Welcome to Psychology Today. I'm your host, Ann Morrow. What is psychology? Well, it's the science of propelling oneself safely through the environment to enhance well-being. So thank you for watching. Our show is about bicycling in general and the celebration of our local cyclists who practice the science of psychology. We hope that Psychology Today helps inspire you to ride a bike and helps you to be more mindful of safety. Those of us that volunteer for Psychology Today believe there's an abundance of bicycling activity to celebrate in the Portland metro area, and we endeavor to introduce you to people who help our community of cyclists. I do want to give a quick thank you to our capable crew behind the scenes, volunteers who make our show possible. Our guest is a regular on the show, Jeanette Kloos. If regular is, annually. And so she's been instrumental in the restoration of the historic Columbia River Highway out along the Columbia River Gorge. How does that tie into our bicycle theme of Psychology Today? Well, in two ways. One, that restored highway is for bicyclists and pedestrians, and two, the historic Columbia River Highway organization sponsors a bike ride or an event that you can go out and do, and that's to help pay for some of their accomplishments and raise money for more. So we'll talk more about that towards the end of the show, about the Gorge Ride. But right now we're going to talk to Jeanette about what's going on out in the Gorge area on the historic Columbia River Highway. So like I said, you've been a guest before, but I do like to talk to you, at least once a year, because your reconnecting and restoration is an ongoing project.
Absolutely.
And it's a huge undertaking and so beneficial for cyclists and hikers and nature lovers as a whole. And I know, and I think I've said before on the show, I take for granted that beautiful area. And so I like to have it brought front forward so that we all know that it's out there, especially for us bicyclists. So let's start with an overview about what it is exactly that you're trying to accomplish.
The overall goal is to be able to ride a bike from Portland Troutdale to the Dalles without being on Interstate 84 and restoring as much of the highway to its original condition as possible, even the sites that are open to motor vehicle traffic, but as well the reconnection projects that are hiking and biking only.
And we'll be talking about some of the specifics about that, and I want to give our viewers a heads up. We're going to have a couple of videos here in the near future so that you'll see what we're talking about and the areas that we're talking about and why they're so compelling for nature lovers. So let's review some history and learn more about your involvement with the Friends of the Historic Columbia River Highway. How did your career lead you to this?
Well, the most central part is that the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area Act was passed in 1986, and in that Congress asked that a study of the highway be developed. And I was asked to do a 6-month special assignment. That 6-month special assignment is now 35 years, but I was an environmentalist with Oregon Department of Transportation, and before that I was with the Federal Highway Administration and was part of a bicycle coordinator. So I was already interested in bicycling, I was already interested in cultural resources, so both of those helped me with the 6-month special assignment and the rest of it.
So that covers so you were, it kind of started when it was your paying career.
Yes.
And how long have you been a volunteer on the project then?
15 years.
15 years, okay. And counting. And what's been your most challenging task to date and why?
The major challenge has always been funding. The projects to take the old highway and make it into a hiking and biking path are quite expensive. Mm-hmm. And for the first 10 years or so, there wasn't any source of funding that was applicable. finally, the Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act, ICE-T, was passed with the enhancement program, and it had 10 different categories of things that could qualify. The historic highway qualified in 5 of those 10 categories. So we were able to get it, the first project funded from Tanner Creek to Eagle Creek, and since then, there's been more federal funding available, but it's always been a competition for those funds. It's much more difficult than funding just a regular highway project.
Okay. And do you see this particular, this is a off-script question, this particular administration is, or do you have a sense of how favorable or unfavorable they might be towards some of this stuff?
I think they're quite favorable, and with Representative Peter DeFazio being the chair of the Infrastructure Committee, and his bill is very much positive, and Representative DeFazio has said over 25 years ago that he really wants to see this project done. So we're hopeful.
Yes.
But it's still, a challenge is still competitive.
Yeah, yeah. And there's so many pieces to these projects as far as getting them drawn out, how it's going to look, and I don't even know how complicated it must all be. So we'll talk a little bit more about some of these things that you have going on and maybe touch on some of that about how challenging it can be. Let's go to one of the videos that we have so that our viewers get a little more perspective on exactly what we're talking about, the area we're talking about, what it looks like very literally. And this is from 2013. It's a little over 3 minutes long. So let's look at the video and then we'll come back with Jeanette and talk some more about this area.
Gorge is about land, but it's also about the people. Once the historic highway came in, people were able to start appreciating the gorge.
This place is stunning, and I'm fortunate enough to live and work here every day, and I know the magic of the gorge, and it's exciting to see that through other people's eyes as well and help understand the potential of reconnecting this historic highway trail.
The Columbia River Highway is really the legacy of the whole Department of Transportation and the whole legacy of the state of Oregon. The single biggest challenge is when it was first constructed, it was deconstructed. There were tunnels that were blown up, there were portions of the highway that were basically just left. And so we've got to restore that. We've got engineering to do, we've got repaving to do, we've got tunnels to redo. And that last 10 miles is really that last bit.
It's going to be something that benefits the local communities for the people who live there, but it also benefits the communities in terms of tourism and making this a worldwide destination spot.
People can come out and they can ride 20, 25 miles. But when you connect all of the pieces together, when you finish the connection between Cascade Locks and Tweed River, that's going to be transformational.
Anyone who's been on the pieces that we have of this trail is absolutely blown away. Imagine when you take the 2-mile section and this 2-mile section, and imagine you can do the entire trail. It makes it a world-class facility. You're actually here to celebrate something with us today. We're at a huge milestone with this project. For the first time in 77 years, you can ride a bike from Troutdale to Cascade Locks without having to be on the shoulder of Interstate 84.
But what we're really here about is the next 9 miles, because this is a case where the whole truly is much greater than the sum of its parts.
This project is key to connecting us all, and we're very appreciative of that.
We're going to do everything we can. We're at the end of the trail, but we're going to welcome you here. We're going to open our arms wide and welcome all the cyclists of the world.
Bicycling is just growing and growing and growing, and we're seeing it in Cascade Lock. Thanks for riding, and thanks for continuing to connect this. But do remember that it's not done.
People from all over the world will be flying into PDX, and they'll be taking a week-long tour, stopping at each of the cities and staying in a hotel overnight, and just having a leisurely, wonderful tour through the gorge. It really will be an amazing place to visit when it's finished.
Jeanette, that video is 8 years old now. So what's happened since then as far as the completion of any projects since then?
Well, that video was celebrating the completion of the section between John B. Yawn State Park and Moffett Creek, so that you could get from the drivable portion all the way into Cascade Locks without being on Interstate 84. Since then, in 2016, we had the 100th anniversary of the highway and a big celebration, and the completion of the section between Starvation Creek and Lindsay Creek, which is 1.33 miles. And in that 1.33 miles, there's 4 waterfalls that you can see, which is really nice. And in 2019, the section between Wyeth and Lindsay Creek was completed, so that's another almost 3 miles. And there was also a project in 2018 that was wayfinding signs, so that there is a consistent image of a map of the historic highway, and then showing you where you are, what is a mile in one direction or 2 miles in the other direction, what facilities are available. So that was a good project to unify the area. And right now, Mitchell Point Tunnel is under construction.
It is. It's just kind of beginning at this point?
Yes, they started it, notice to proceed in January, and they're still working on things like rockfall mitigation, making sure that it's safe to do the project. They haven't started blasting the actual tunnel yet.
Okay, okay. And remind us of the impact of the Eagle Creek fire in 2017.
It was huge. It was almost 50,000 acres, and it closed not only the freeway and the historic highway for quite a while, but for a much longer period, the trails were closed, both the hiking trails and the historic Lower Highway State Trail. Lots of burnt trees, and then leading into landslides and rock falls. And now there is enough vegetation that it's slowing down.
Good.
Even this past winter, there was quite a landslide on the historic highway near Waukena that closed the highway for a couple weeks because it was just like feet of dirt and rock on top of the roadway.
And I think our friend Dick Weber was out there at some point, and it was closed, and he reported back that if you venture out in there with the road closed, it was like a $2,000 fine, I think.
And one of the other places that was severely affected was the Oneonta Tunnel. That nice wood lining all burnt. So it was originally constructed in 1914. It was closed when they moved the highway around it. Was reopened in 2009, closed because of the fire, and now 2021 it's reopened, and you can go through it again.
Good. Is it complete then, or just kind
Yes.
of okay? Okay. And is it pretty much the way it was before the fire?
Yes.
Wow.
That was one of the requirements for the FEMA money, was that they couldn't do different things. They had to do it just the way it was for the last project.
Well, that makes sense, and that's probably what you wanted anyway. That's what you're trying to achieve. So most summers, and I think maybe it was the 100th anniversary that you talked about earlier, you have antique car shows and antique tours, and it's a lot of fun. And I don't think you were able to have one this year.
No.
For various reasons. But tell us about those, and then we will watch a video after that. But hopefully we'll see another car tour in 2022, huh?
We hope to. The 100th anniversary tour was all the way from Troutdale to the Dalles. All of the other ones that we've had have just been from Hood River to Rowena Crest and back.
Okay.
So it's a shorter route, but you still get to go through the Mosier Twin Tunnels, and you get the view at Rowena Crest, and you get to stop for ice cream in Mosier. And the main reason behind having the antique car tours is to allow people that cannot walk all the way to the Mosier Twin Tunnels
sure.
be able to experience them. So we do have invitation to passengers to ride along with the antique cars.
I didn't realize that. That's really nice because yeah, it is a bit of a distance, and riding a bike, or if you're just not that mobile, it would be hard to get to. Very nice. And I know that you have like a period outfit to wear for these big celebrations too. You get all gussied up.
Yes. Most expensive piece of clothing that I own.
I imagine. Where do you get something like that anyway? Not on Amazon, I hope.
No, from a local seamstress that does historic clothes for different things. Like, obviously, it's totally different clothes for Shampooey, different era, but any era that you want, she knows what details were different that year versus the year before or after.
Wow, what a priceless little person to have here in the community.
Yes.
Nice. Well, let's go to our video now. This is the 2016 Antique Car Tour, and it's just a little over 2 minutes long.
And we're all out here celebrating the 100th anniversary of the dedication of the historic Columbia River Highway. It was the only way to get from Western Oregon to Eastern Oregon 100 years ago. We started in Troutdale, the gateway to the Columbia River Gorge. We stopped at the Vista House, which everybody's got to do to take a little break. We also were able to drive through the Oneonta Tunnel, which is usually available to bicycles and pedestrians. But we got to drive through it again today. 93 vintage antique automobiles went through the Oneonta Tunnel on our way up here to Cascade Locks, but we're not done yet. Then we're going to go to Hood River and then through the Mosier tunnels, which is a real treat because those usually are only available to bicycles and pedestrians. We're going to go through Mosier. Now you don't want to blink because Mosier you can miss. We're going to go on then up to Rowena, which is a fantastic view, and eventually ending up at the Dalles, the end of that corridor through the gorge.
2016 is a really important year for celebrating the Columbia River Highway. It's its 100th anniversary. It's the first scenic highway in the United States. The design guidelines for advanced engineering and sensitivity to the landscape in constructing this highway really laid the groundwork for the paradigm that the National Park Service used starting in the 20s in designing and building its roads in the western national parks. I don't think anybody's really experienced this highway until they ride it or drive in a vintage car. What I mean by that is cars from the earliest days, and we saw some of those out here today from the teens, cars that were as old as the highway, to cars from model year 1949. Wonderful experience to be out here to witness these cars rushing by, but also to ride in them and to smell the oil and the grease that one gets to appreciate in driving a vintage car rather than a new car.
I just love seeing those old, I'm not a car person, but I just love those old cars. It's just so fun. And they have so much fun with their cars and their horns, and they just, they just thrive on that.
And they all dress up
yes.
in period clothes also.
Yes. So the highway was originally referred to as the king of the roads. So now that we've watched that video, why was that?
Well, it was the first highway in the country that was built as a scenic highway, and it was built to very high standards for its time. It was built with a maximum 5% grade, minimum 100-foot radius curves, guardrail, rock walls, and it was also, as Dr. Hadlow said, the forerunner of what the National Park Service uses as lay lightly on the land. So to build the highway into the landscape rather than just cutting
Okay.
or filling.
And it shows. I mean, that's
Yes.
that's why it's so exquisite and worth restoring.
Yes.
So what's happening this year in 2021? What projects are in motion or going into motion?
Well, as we mentioned, the Mitchell Point Tunnel, excuse me, is under construction. It is going to be quite a draw because it's going to be twice as long as the original tunnel and still have 5 windows in it. And the windows are going to look a little different because the tunnel's farther back into the cliff for rock stability concerns. But it's going to be a beautiful long tunnel.
Nice. So it's finally kind of happening.
Yes.
Because this is Mitchell Point that's just constantly been mentioned, but how it was going to happen and expense and all that, but it's happening.
It's under construction, and the next section to the west from Viento to Mitchell Point is being designed, and they do have the construction money for that. It will start next year. Both of them are about 2 years or more in actual construction time.
So in those areas that you're describing, those are areas that as a cyclist you need to be on I-84 to go east or west?
Yes.
And I've ridden on I-84. Obviously no cyclist wants to be on a freeway, but it's not horrific but I'm looking forward to that ability to stay off of I-84. It's a very wide shoulder.
Most of it.
Most of it.
The worst part, Shell Rock Mountain, that had a narrower shoulder, now that is bypassed by a section of trail. So most of the shoulder is 10, 12 feet wide.
Yeah.
So it's not pleasant, but
No.
it's doable, and
Yes.
it is legal.
Yes, and it is legal. Good point. What about the Eagle Creek Stairs? So is that the right name for them? There by...
They are by Eagle Creek. That was in the first project we ever did in 1996, and it was when the Americans with Disabilities Act was not quite implemented, and we asked, well, what can we do here? We have this big differential between where we're starting the old highway up here and where we need to get to down here, and the old highway made this big loop that we couldn't recreate because there was no ground there. It was air. It had been dug out. So we put in the stairway, and we did add a groove on the side so that you could put your bike wheel in there. But it doesn't work for people with trailers or tricycles or other people. And when we built it, that was the end. So you had a mile of accessible trail, and that was much more than there had been. But now that we've got stuff on either side, it's really quite an obstacle. So far we have, David Evans and Associates has done a pro bono scoping report saying that yes, you can take out the stairs and put in a ramp. And they had a couple different options. So far, there is no funding to actually do it. The next funding priority is to finish from Mitchell Point to Hood River. And that is in design, but there's no construction funding. So once that is funded, they will continue working to try and find funding to replace the stairway with a ramp.
Yeah. Like you're saying, it's quite passable if you're able-bodied, and if you just have a bicycle, like you say, there's a trough and you walk up the stairs and you push your bike. But yeah, if you're touring, like loaded touring and pulling a trailer, then maybe you take your bike up first and come back and get the trailer or something like that. And certainly, yeah, if you're not able-bodied or riding a recumbent or something like that, you're going to struggle. So that's great that...
We're working on it.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm using the royal we. It's actually Oregon Department of Transportation that's working on it.
So does it help motivate people to want to fix this, that it doesn't, that it leaves so many people out in the cold as far as the disability aspect of it?
At the last grand opening for the Wyeth to Lindsay Creek section, there was a group of people that were all saying, this is not working for us. We need to replace the stairway. And ODOT had a good, the regional manager had a good discussion with them and said, yes, we realize that we need to do this and we'll keep working on it.
Good, good. I thought that was the case, that people are hearing what's, that people have that need. So it's just time and money, as always.
Yes.
So this is a huge project, and I think most people don't do such big projects in their professional career, and you're doing it as a volunteer. How do you stay motivated with all this going on?
Because there's always more to do. I would really like to see all of the trail built and be able to ride a bike from Troutdale to the Dalles. I probably am not personally going to be able to ride it, but that has been the goal for 35 years.
Yeah.
So, and we keep doing little things and having celebrations when we accomplish a new piece, and that's part of what keeps me motivated.
It's true. Those celebrations really are that, and a lot of people come out and they're thrilled and they go experience what's been done. So yeah, little by little you learn to love it all. Well, let's take a quick break and we'll watch a safety video now. And then we'll come back with more Psychology Today and our discussion with Jeanette. We'll talk about that bike ride that's coming up later in August.
Bike safe, bike smart. Hi, my name is Xander.
And my name's Elizabeth.
Over the next few minutes, we're gonna have some fun and talk about some pretty important stuff.
Some of it you've heard before, but it never hurts to hear it again.
And again.
And again. So here we go. Did you know that just falling off your bike is enough to get a serious brain injury? So play it safe. Wear your helmet every time you ride. It can reduce the risk of head injury by up to 85%.
And that's a lot. The helmet should be snug on your head and sit flat. The strap should form a V under your ear, and the chin strap should also be snug. 2 fingers should fit in between your eyebrow and your helmet.
Also, make sure your helmet meets safety standards. Look for a sticker that says CPSC. This stands for the Consumer Product Safety Commission.
All the stuff we talked about today is common sense.
But you still need to think. Be courteous and be predictable by always riding in a straight line.
Wear a helmet. And follow the rules of the road. Ride with traffic on the right side of the road. Ride single file.
Obey traffic lights and traffic signs. Check behind you before turning. Use proper hand signals.
Stop, look left, right, then left again before entering a street. And use caution at an intersection.
Make eye contact with other drivers. Be careful around parked cars and watch for objects in your path.
And at night, be seen to be safe.
Never assume that motorists or pedestrians will see you. Remember, bikes are smaller than cars, and if there's a crash between the two, any guesses who will win?
That's all the time we have. So remember these 4 words. Bike safe, bike smart.
So helmets are a big thing with us here at with all our volunteers on Psychology Today. And certainly their advice, you can probably go to any store that sells helmets and it's probably going to meet the legal protocols for helmets. So that's not a concern. If you can find one on sale and you need a helmet, go for it. But certainly you can spend more money and get better technology. They're getting better and better technology for brain injuries and to help prevent brain injuries if your head should hit the pavement. So if you can spend more money, I'd encourage you to do so. But by all means, wear a helmet. You know, we joke about seeing kids riding along with their helmet hanging off the handlebars. Like if they're going to crash, you're going to grab the helmet and put it on their head and strap it down. So be safe. So at this point, I like to talk about just some biking that's going on and what you might get involved in yourself with cycling, and just encourage people to get out and ride, especially this time of year when the weather is nicer. So many of our old favorites are coming up, you know, after we've struggled with COVID-19. Of course, 2020, most events were canceled. It just was deemed unsafe. We didn't want to be out. But I think it's been determined that the virus does not transmit out in the open air on a bike ride. I attended a thing for American League of Bicyclists, and the team doctor for the United States, you know, at that point that was true. So I know our club, our bike club, Portland Bicycling Club, has resumed rides, and a lot of organizations have resumed event rides, and Jeanette here does the Gorge Ride. We'll get some details about that in just a moment. And that's coming up on August 28th. Usually it's a ride that's in kind of early June, but everybody's juggling around, you know, as things open up more, getting their rides on the calendar. Another organization, Salem Bicycle Club, always does Monster Cookie in April, and it's August 29th. So we've got the Gorge Ride on the 28th of August and Monster Cookie on the 29th. I would really highly recommend that you do both. Really. I mean, what a great Oregon weekend of riding your bicycle in two really distinctively different areas of our state, but close enough that if you live in the Portland metro area, you can sleep in your own bed at night and just get out to each start and do these cool rides. So Monster Cookie, you may have noticed it has the word cookie in the name, so yes, there are cookies on the route. And so check them out, and you can just Google the Gorge Ride and Monster Cookie and register online, and it'll be a lot of fun. And another ride that's coming up that's an annual event in the Portland metro area is the Harvest Century, and that's on September 11th. So again, as a member of Portland Bicycling Club, I want to share that we now have what are called rookie rides. So rides for beginners that are less than 10 miles long. They're kind of slowish, you know, hopefully you can do 8 to 12 miles an hour on the flats. And that video just talked about rules of the road. Well, one good way to learn rules of the road is ride with other people. And that's kind of the thing that we work on those rookie rides, and show you how to make a left turn and take the lane if you need to use the bike lanes. What are these green areas about, and what should you expect there? Things like that. So it's a quick, easy tutorial learning a lot about cycling. So I'd encourage you to look at portlandbicyclingclub.com and our ride calendar, and look at the description of the rides and look for some that meet your needs. And if you're trying to just get out there, that's one way to do it. And we'll help you get up to speed, and you know, maybe you're not quite ready for the Gorge Ride yet, but you can set that as a goal for next year, and with just a little bit of riding, I'm sure that you can achieve that goal. So let's get back to Jeanette Kloos, and we will now learn more about the historic Columbia River Highway restoration, and most importantly, the upcoming Gorge Ride. So as I mentioned a minute ago, later in August on the 28th, you have the Gorge Ride. And so why don't you tell us about this event and how it benefits the Friends of the Historic Columbia River Highway. Where is the route?
The route is from the Gorge Discovery Center near the Dalles to the Senator Marco Hatfield West Trailhead, almost to Hood River and back. So it's 38.5 miles. It is the major fundraiser for the Friends of the Historic Kloos River Highway. So that's how we were able to do things like provide matching funds for some of the projects. One of the projects that we're funding right now is an inventory of the historic Kloos River Highway State Trail. Since it's been built over 35 years, some things have changed. Some things that there's a real variations on a theme. Like there's at least 5 different kinds of bollards to keep people from driving a car onto the trail. So we're having an inventory of what all those variations are, and hopefully we'll get some consensus on what standards should be used for the future parts of the trail. And the other part of the Gorge Ride is really to introduce people to that eastern end of the historic Kloos River Highway. There are many people that think that the historic Kloos River Highway is just from Troutdale to Ainsworth, the waterfall section. They don't even know that there's the other sections available. And the part of the highway that is open to motor vehicle traffic from the Discovery Center to Mosier has very low traffic, so it's nowhere near as crowded as the waterfall section. And then you get on to the Historic Highway State Trail where it's bicyclists and pedestrians and people in roller skates and other things.
Oh, sure. Yes. Anything with a wheel. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And so the distance is 38.5 miles round trip.
Yes, yes. And it's really a beautiful route. We saw a little bit of it on the antique car video.
Yes.
As they mentioned Rowena, which, like you just said, that's part of it, and the Mosier Twin Tunnels. So you'll go through all of those. So I guess those are kind of the highlights. What do you consider to be the highlights of that route?
Those are 2 of the highlights. For Rowena Crest, you're starting at the bottom and you're going up this really curved route, the Rowena Loops, and it's 3 miles of 5% grade, so you're constantly climbing, and the reward is the view up on top. And the Mosier Twin Tunnels are also very much a high point. The third high point is the rest stop at Mayordale, which is a old historic estate with cherry groves and vineyards all around it. If you're going from Mosier to the east, it's the big white house right before the curve, and it's being lovingly restored by its current owner, Tom Gagnier. And he also owns the vineyard and the orchard. So when we have the ride in June, we often have fresh picked cherries.
Yes.
Not going to happen in August.
No.
But it's also surrounded by trees. It has nice grass. So it's a very nice place to have a rest stop.
It is a real nice place to take a break, and I think it's one of those places where when you're in a car, you're not going to stop. But here, as a cyclist on this event, you get to go down into this, like you say, an estate and just really enjoy it. And it's, some refreshments and porta potties and all that good stuff that bicyclists need halfway through the ride.
Yes. If you're riding the route without being on the Gorge Ride, there is a significant lack of water stops and restrooms. So that's one of the things that we provide. We also provide food. It will be a little different this year with the COVID precautions. We'll have more prepackaged, individual wrapped food items, but we'll still have quite a variety for people to choose from, and some fresh fruit like mandarin oranges and bananas.
Oh, nice, nice. That is, it's a wonderful route. And you described the climb up to Rowena, but it's, like you say, it's only 5%. It's very doable, even if you're, you know, not in great shape, and you can, there's lots of pull-offs to take a break and catch your breath and then go again. So it's a little intimidating the first time you do those, and even down there by Multnomah Falls, when you do those switchbacks, the first time it's like, whoa, but then, whoa, you're up at the top. It's just, boom, it's not as bad as you envision it's going to be.
And the trip back down is
yes,
fun, too.
The trip back down is very nice. So who can participate in this ride?
Basically anyone. The registration is currently open through Eventbrite. Registration will close on August 23rd, but we also have day of event registration. So if you go to the Discovery Center between 7 in the morning and 10 in the morning, you could register on the day of the ride. And we have a lot of young people and a lot of older people that, that all ride. There's occasionally somebody that is taking a small child in a trailer. But yeah, anybody that has the stamina to be able to do 38 and a half miles is welcome to join us. And we also have a need for additional volunteers. So if you want to have one person in a family wants to ride and another one just wants to be part of it by doing a volunteer job, we've got some available.
Good, yeah, good idea.
Stops.
Yeah. Okay, good to know. Well, I'll be out there doing a SAG with my husband Jim. We've not done that before with you. So SAG is S-A-G, it means support and gear. And on an event ride like this, you do pay to do the ride, but like she's saying, you're getting food and rest stops and water, and you're getting a lot of amenities. And there's usually a vehicle, at least one around, that if you just have a bad day or your bike falls apart or just whatever, it's a safety net. So that somebody's around that's going to pick you up and maybe help you fix the flat or put your bike on the back of their car and you inside and bring you back. So I think that that's encouraging for a lot of people because they're not quite sure how it's going to go and a little concern. And so there's something, it's just reassuring.
And we also have mechanics at the 3 different places, the Discovery Center, the Mayordale Rest Stop, and the West Trailhead. So if you have a mechanical problem, they should be able to get you back up and riding again.
Yeah, good to know. And a lot of times that's what a SAG does, is just take you to the nearest mechanic so that they can get you back on the road, because most cyclists want to do the ride. They don't want to sit in the back of a car.
Yes.
So I have to say I've done the ride many times, and it's always one of my most delightful days of the summer in riding. And the course is well marked. It's pretty hard to get lost on that particular route.
Yes.
And just having all the other riders along the course, and since it's an out and back, you're kind of seeing each other. You know, you're still riding out towards Hood River, and some people have already gotten there and they're coming back, and you see people you know, and it's just a lot of fun. There's just a lot of energy, and it's so well supported. And then of course there's the scenery. So take a look. You know, again, you can just Google the Gorge Ride and take a look, and you can register online, as Jeanette said, and add it to your summer calendar of events, and it's, you won't be sorry. So for those in the Portland area, there's stuff going on at Multnomah Falls. It's just a lot of chatter about what's happening at Multnomah Falls, and so it's been being loved to death, I think, is what's happening to a lot of places on the planet.
Yes.
And so how does this impact cyclists, and what's going on to alleviate some of these problems?
Well, in the last couple years, there's been a huge backup on the historic highway that goes all the way from Multnomah Falls back to Waukena, where cars are sitting there trying to go that less than a mile, but it takes them over an hour. And with the narrow roadway, particularly on the viaducts on either side of Multnomah Falls, it would be difficult even for a bicyclist to go around all those cars that are just sitting there. So the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area Forest Service is trying something different this year. They're trying a timed entry ticket process. So you need to go online to recreation.gov and get a time slot where you can get into Multnomah Falls. That doesn't guarantee you that you get a parking space, but it guarantees that you can get in. There's also 3 different shuttle buses that you can ride. When you pay for the shuttle, you automatically get into Multnomah Falls also. The one shuttle goes from Gateway to Troutdale to Multnomah Falls to Cascade Locks and to Hood River, and then beyond that to the Dalles and other places in Washington, and that is called CAT, C-A-T. The second one has a parking lot at Bridal Veil. It's called Satchwatch. And it is a hop-on, hop-off bus where it stops at different places, and you can go do a hike and come back and get on the shuttle bus again. And that shuttle, the vehicle is an old school bus, and it costs $11, I believe. A step up from that is what Gray Line is doing. They're doing a waterfall trolley. And it starts at Corbett at the site of the future Crown Point Country Historical Society Museum. The building is under construction. The museum doesn't exist quite yet. But they are renting out their parking lot to Gray Line for the trolley. And it is also hop on, hop off. So you can go and to Latterell, take the hike, get back on the trolley, go down to Bridal Veil and Multnomah Falls and Horsetail and Ainsworth, and then it turns around and comes back. And it is a very nice vehicle, open air, and it's an experience just to ride in the vehicle. So it's worth the extra money, and that the trolley has interpretation. They tell you about the history of the area and the geology and other stuff. So it's really more like a tour bus than the Satchwatch, which is pretty basic, just getting you from here to there.
Yeah, interesting. Boy, that's a lot to learn about and see what's going to meet your needs.
And it's it's just starting, so things could change in the future, particularly with the timed entry system. They are thinking it's going to go through most of September. Then they'll evaluate how well it worked and see what changes need to be made for next year. But you asked about how does it affect bicyclists. Bicyclists, if you're arriving at Multnomah Falls with your bike and your helmet, you can get in. You don't have to have the timed entry ticket. And with there are people at Multnomah Falls that keep the cars moving. They don't back up for a mile anymore.
Oh, okay.
So it's much easier to get into Multnomah Falls with a bike than it was in previous years.
Good to know, because just as you described, I've ridden down in there, and yeah, you couldn't get past the cars because it's narrow and it just wasn't safe. And then you kind of inch through them and turn around and go back, and you never made it till Multnomah Falls, where you were expecting to get a coffee or something.
Or an ice cream cone.
Or an ice cream cone, something delicious anyway, and a quick view of the falls from a distance. And so that's good to know. Now, I've heard, and this is just rumor and hearsay and all that, that, you know, maybe they hope to close off the scenic highway right there at Multnomah Falls so that it's just bikes and pedestrians and people doing, and maybe the buses, but no cars. Is that a discussion, or is that just a pipe dream?
It's a discussion. And part of the problem is that there's so many different jurisdictions. You've got the Forest Service is in charge of Multnomah Falls itself. Oregon Department of Transportation is in charge of the highway. Things like traffic control, people parking in places that aren't parking spots, that's Multnomah County Sheriff. And you've got the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area that has interest, and you've got a lot of things along the highway that are actually Oregon State Parks. So all of those people are meeting and trying to discuss what to do next. And yes, some of the neighbors don't like some of the ideas that are being suggested, so they continue to discuss and see what can we do, what is in the realm of possibility. So it's definitely not something that's going to happen this year.
Right.
And it would take a lot of agreement and memorandums of understanding and stuff to
Yes.
be able to make that big a change.
Yes.
And the different jurisdictions all have different perspectives on what they want to do. Oregon Department of Transportation says it's a highway, it should be open to cars.
Well, yeah, I guess
So,
they would see it that way.
But sitting in a hour-long backup is not good for anybody.
Yeah.
So some things are going to change. How they're going to change, I can't predict.
Right, right. Well, thank you. I think you at least gave us a lot of information as to where it's at and what some of the suggestions are. And, you know, we all, as a cyclist, I'm all in favor of just opening it up to bicyclists. But yeah, there's quite a few houses and
Yes,
things
there are.
there.
It's not all public ownership. There are people that live there, and 30 years ago when there was a suggestion that we might make it one way.
Yeah.
There was just a huge outpouring of from the local people that it would make them make such a long trip around to get to and from their homes that that idea was quashed.
Yeah, I imagine loudly. So, okay, well and I wanted to, you mentioned some buses. So the one from Gateway, doesn't it have a bike rack on the front, or can you bring a bike?
I believe it has some accommodation for bikes, but it's like only two per bus. I did not see bike facilities on either of Sasquatch or Trolley. Sasquatch says it's dog friendly. So, for whatever that's worth.
Can we trust a Sasquatch? Well, and some of my friends have gotten on the bus at Gateway with their bikes and ridden the bus out to Cascade Locks, and then they ride their bike back. And so, you know, it's a long ways to do it both ways. It's a long day in the saddle, but to take the bus out there, then you have that beautiful ride and enjoy the historic highway, but you don't have quite as long of a day. So
yes,
just a thought, but it is limited, so it can't be like a club situation or anything like that. It's just a couple of people. I don't know much about it, but yeah, that's a possibility. Let's see. So you talked about, when we were before the show, we talked about that there were 3 R's: restoration, reconstruction,
remember, restore, reconnect, and they've added a 4th R,
yes,
revive, and that is reviving the local community economies. When Interstate 84 was put in, it bypassed particularly Cascade Locks and also Mosier, that they just didn't have the traffic anymore. And so reviving the economy of Cascade Locks and Mosier is definitely part of the goals now for the Historic Highway State Trail. And Cascade Locks in particular, but Mosier to a lesser extent, has really seen that the bicyclists on the route are more likely to stop and buy something and actually get into town, as opposed to the cars that stay on I-84 and just go by without hardly blinking an eye.
Yeah, yeah.
So it is helping, and the expectation is that when the whole 77 miles is accessible by bike, that it will bring even more economic development to the communities along the route.
And there's a good restaurant there, there's ice cream there, you mentioned a brewery there, and you don't have to ride out from Troutdale if you're not capable of doing that. There's lots of parks. If you just do a little bit of research, you can park along the way and do a little ride in the middle there. You don't have to start at one end or the other.
Yes, there are trailheads all along the way. The John B. Yon trailhead is fairly small. The Tooth Rock trailhead at exit 40 has quite a few parking spaces. Eagle Creek's small. You can actually park in Cascade Locks and do that trail and come back. And there's a large new trailhead at Wyeth, and a small parking lot at Starvation Creek and Viento. So each of them are different places that you could start and to go either direction and end up in Cascade Locks.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Jeanette, for joining us. And it's been a great show and very informative, as always, when we invite Jeanette to join us on Psychology Today. And I hope that you learned what's going on up there on the historic Columbia River Highway. She's one of our people in our local area that has a lot of passion for cycling, and we're all benefiting from it. So thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
So by riding with other people, with a club or a group, you can learn some of these rules of the road. You too can be out there on the old historic Columbia River Highway doing all of it or part of it and share in this wealth of beauty in our own backyard. So I hope that you got enticed to get out there and explore, and don't forget about the Gorge Ride. That'll give you a good taste of what's out there and what's happening. When you are riding in a group, make sure that you use your voice and use arm signals so that people with you, whether it's a formed group or you just ended up with a bunch of people, use your voice and tell people what you're doing, like stopping or slowing, so that you don't have any kind of a crash or a mishap. And everyone around you will appreciate that they know what you're doing and encourage them to do the same. One last thing, when you're passing somebody, please say on your left as you go by. The people seem to be mute anymore as they come around you on the left, and that can create an accident as well. So please ride safely. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you get out and do the Gorge Ride and any other rides that are coming up this summer. Get out and have some fun on your bicycle.